for me, telling me that it is for the glory of our most holy Mother in heaven. That's in this second memoir that Lucia wrote about the apparitions of the angel in 1916. The apparition in the spring, in the summer, and in autumn. The third memoir of Lucia was written in 1941. The Bishop of Leiria wrote to Lucia again to announce that Father José Galamba de Oliveira was preparing a new edition of the book about Jacinta, and to ask Lucia to remember everything else that she could about her cousin, so that it will be included in that new edition of the book. This order fell in the deeps of the seer's soul like a ray of light, telling her that the time had come to reveal the first two parts of the secret. The secret that Our Lady gave to them in the third apparition, July 13th, 1917. And so Lucia writes, in obedience to the order that your most reverend excellency gave me in the letter of July 26, to think and point out something else that might remind me of Jacinta, I thought, and it seemed to me that by this order, God was speaking, and the time had come to respond to two questions that I have been sent to me several times, and to which I have deferred to answer. It seems to me that it would be pleasing to God and the Immaculate Heart of Mary if Jacinta's book were to dedicate a chapter to talking about hell and another to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So Lucia reveals the two parts of the secret. The first part is the vision of hell that they had in July 13th, 1917. Children saw hell, and Our Lady told them, you have seen hell, where the souls of the poor sinners will go if they do not convert. To obtain this, the conversion of souls, I will be requesting the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. If not, the world will lose itself. But in Portugal, the deposit of faith will be always remaining. So, in the third memoir, Lucia wrote the two first parts of the secret. The bishop were very happy with this third memoir, and they wanted Lucia to write about Francisco. The first memoir was written mainly about Jacinta, but the bishop wanted also tell us about Francisco, your cousin Jacinta's mother. So in October 1941, Lucia was ordered to write down everything she knew about Francisco. She answered, His Most Reverend Excellency also ordered me to write what I can remember about Francisco, more or less like Jacinta, to write in more detail and with more explanations the angel's apparitions. They want to publish them now in this new edition. My God, I can't remember this going public. She had afraid that the people could. She did not understand what the people wanted to know because for her is not important the lives of the children. What is important was the message of Our Lady. Lucia handed over the manuscript on December 8th, 1941, clarifying that she had nothing to hide except the third part of the secret. The text was later published as the fourth memoir of Sister Lucia. In it, she wrote the definitive text of the angel's prayers, adding to the secret the phrase, "In Portugal, the dogma of faith will always be preserved," etc. These four memoirs completes a cycle that ends with Francisco's biography after beginning with Jacinta's biography. Lucia's memory offers everything it can about the story of the apparitions and the lives of the three little shepherds. These first four memoirs were published in book in 1976 by Father Luis Condor, vice postulator of the cause of canonization of the little shepherds Francisco and Jacinta Marto. This volume is currently published in 19 languages. The first edition in English was published in 1978, and more than 1 million copies have already been sold. Today, the book is free to download in a PDF format from the site of the Shrine of Fatima, from the site of the Francisco and Jacinta Marto Foundation, and from the site for the canonization of Sister Lucia. So it's free for those who want to have access to the book. The third part of the secret. In June 1943, around about 2 years after the publication of the fourth memoir, Lucia fell seriously ill, which affected her for several months and put her life at risk. For this reason, on September 30th, the Bishop of Leiria asked her to write the third part of the secret, to which the seer replied, "Lord Bishop, I cannot do that." And he kept insisting, "Sister Lucia, I'm ordering you, write the third part of the secret." And she asked, and she prayed, and she prayed, and so finally, on January 3, 1944, she wrote the third part of the secret. "I write in an act of obedience to you, my God, who sent it to me through His Most Reverend Excellency, the Bishop of Leiria, and your and my Most Holy Mother." This manuscript constitutes the final point of a piece of writing that will have gone through several previous stages, which are limited because they did not satisfy the will of God and Lucia. In fact, in a questionnaire that Monsignor Guerra, rector of the Shrine of Fatima, sent to Lucia in 1986, he asked her, "Did you tear any version of the secret before the definitive version?" And Lucia answers, "Yes, the ones that I could not complete." The text of the secret was deposited in a sealed envelope that was delivered to the Bishop of Leiria. to be deposited in the episcopal archives. But on 1957, the bishop sealed the envelope in another envelope and delivered his envelope to the apostolic nunciature in Lisbon by the auxiliary bishop of Leiria, Dom João Pereira Venâncio. On April 4, 1957, this manuscript was sent to the Vatican and deposited in the secret archives of the Holy Office. In 1959, Pope John the 23rd requested that the document be brought to him to read it, but decided to keep this manuscript yet secret. In 65, Pope Paul VI read the document, becoming aware of the third part of the secret, but after reading it, he decided that it should be not revealed yet. Between July 18 and August 11, 1981, a few months after the attack that Pope John Paul II was started in Rome, he read the original text of the document as well as his Italian translation. For many years, especially from the 1916th onwards, much speculation began to arise about the content of the third part of the secret, to which Sister Lucia responded, "If they leave the most important thing, which has already been said, instead of fulfilling what is asked of them, prayer and penance, they only concern themselves with what is yet to be said. For Lucia is clear. The most important thing from the revelations of Fatima is prayer for peace and sacrifices for the conversion of the sinners. That's the most important thing." Cardinal Angelo Sodano, the Pope's Secretary of State, announced to the public revelation this part of the secret on May 13, 2000, at the end of the Mass for the beatification of Francisco and Jacinta Marto in Fatima by Pope John Paul II, saying, "This text constitutes a prophetic vision comparable to those of sacred scripture, which do not describe in a photographic way the details of future events, but rather summarize and condense on the same background facts that extend over time in an unspecified succession and duration." So the secret, the third part of the secret, tells us in a condensed way about the church of history, a church who gives her life with Christ in the cross for the salvation of sinners. So the children saw a steep hill with a cross in the top with Jesus crucified. All the baptized men and women, lay persons from all ages and conditions, from all vocations, religious persons, bishops, priests, friars, nuns, all going up this mountain. A bishop dressed in white, stumbling with the pressure of sadness and compassion, crossing a city in ruins, praying for the souls of the dead. And then the children saw also the Pope, this bishop dressed in white, going up also to the mountain to reach Christ's cross, and reaching for the summit, the Pope was assassinated with arrows and bullets. And they saw also the two angels with water cans, catching the blood that came from the hands and chest of Jesus, and pouring this blood over the souls of the faithful. And also they saw also an angel with a flaming sword crying, penance, 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 and Our Lady with her hand stopping the punishment. That's the third part of the secret. So, and the original text was on public display in Fatima as part of an exhibition entitled Secret and Revelation in 2014. And still today we can have a virtual tour of this exhibition in the site of the Shrine of Fatima. Some voices are divided on the veracity of the revealed secret, as the Cardinal Ratzinger wrote in the theological commentary. Whoever reads carefully the text of the so-called Third Secret of Fatima will presumably be disappointed or amazed after all the speculation that have been made. No great mystery is revealed. The veil of future is not torn apart. We see the Church of the Martyrs of this century that is about to end, represented through a scene described in a symbolic language that is difficult to decipher. And we know that just in the 20th century, there are more martyrs of the faith than on the previously 19th centuries. And so that's why we know that Our Lady appeared to the children in 1917, when started the First World War. And we know the dangers and persecutions to the church that the German regime of Nazi brought to forward. We know Maximilian Kolbe, we know Edith Stein, Fres Benedict of the Cross. We know all these saints who also died under the Nazi regime, the regime of Communist Party in Russia, an atheistic, materialistic regime that persecuted Christians, all these atheistic ideologies that destroyed man, and so other dangers. So, Sister Lucia herself attested that the text was the secret that she wrote in a meeting with the Secretary of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Cardinal Tarcisio Bertoni, on April 27, 2000, that the text contains the third part of the secret. She answered, "Yes, yes, they are my sheets, and the envelope is mine. These are the sheets I used, and this is my handwriting. This envelope is mine, this letter is mine, this text is mine." As for the rest, Sister Lucia said, "The interpretation is not up to me. but to the Church and to the Pope. I repeat the facts, what I saw, what I heard, and what I perceived. Um, so, yeah. Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, a pilgrim to Fatima also in 1997 and 2010, concludes this his theological commentary in this way. We see and experience that the evil one has power in this world. He has power because our freedom continually allows itself to be diverted from God. But since God took on a human heart and thus oriented man's freedom towards good, towards God, freedom for evil no longer has the last word. What has been true since then is expressed in his faith. In the world you will have tribulations, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Jesus said this in John's Gospel. At the end of the 80s, the Shrine of Fatima acquired the Santos family home where Lucia was born and spent the first years of her life with her parents and siblings. The aim was to reconstruct the environment experienced in 1917 and to serve as a memory for pilgrims of the events and message of Our Lady. In this context, in 1989, Lucia responded to the request of the rector of Shrine of Fatima, Monsignor Guerra. He asks me to describe the image of my father better, because the one I give in the memoirs is death, and he wants to put it in our house, a place for reflection on the family. To this end, yes, because I remember my parents as admirable examples of a Christian family united in faith, hope, and love. So she wrote the fifth memory about her parent and the sixth memory about her mother. The fifth about her father and the sixth about her mother. Since I wrote the fifth memoir about my father, several people have asked me to also write about my mother, considering her virtue worthy of being known for the glory of God and an example of Christian life as a wife, mother, and housewife, always exact and hardworking in fulfilling all her duties to God, to those in the house, and to those outside. This sixth memory is the longest one and is a fascinating document due to his character and revealing an extraordinary spiritual maturity developed above all over 40 years as a Carmelite nun. It was completed on March 25, 1993, and published 3 years later, together with the fifth memoir. In addition to the 4 memoirs written by order of the Bishop of Leiria, who approved the apparitions of Fatima and oversaw the beginning of the Shrine of Fatima, and the 2 written on the 80s and 90s at the request of the rector of the shrine, we cannot forget the correspondence. First, with her mother when she went to Porto. Then, with Bishop Dom José and the other bishops who helped her on a spiritual journey, a response to the letters that people from all over the world wrote to her asking for graces, intercession, and advice, especially after she departed for the Carmel of St. Therese in Coimbra. From 1970 onwards, the correspondence received by Lucia began to be registered, totaling 70,000 letters from 66 countries at his death. She responded to them all with candor and affection. When she made her 70th anniversary, she was given a typewriter with a memory bank that allowed her to respond more effectively. And even with more than 70 years old, she learned to use this typewriter, and she liked it very, very much. For health reasons, and after the beatification of the little shepherds and publication of the book Appeals from the Message of Fatima, she stopped responding personally to the letters that people continued to write to her. In the apparition of July 13th in Covadeiria, the Virgin Mary had asked for the consecration of Russia, and in a vision that she had of the Holy Trinity and Our Lady in the convent of Tui on June 13, 1929, she was clear. Our Lady was clear, telling Lucia, "The time has come when God asks the Holy Father to make, in union with all the bishops of the world, the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, promising to save it by these means. There are so many souls that the justice of God condemns for sins committed against me, that I come to ask for reparation. Sacrifice yourself for this intention and pray." So Lucia began to speak to her confessor and the Bishop of Leiria that the time had come to make this consecration. Still, it was only 8 years after that the Bishop of Leiria transmitted this request to Pope Pius XI, reiterated the following year by all the bishops of Portugal who had already consecrated Portugal in Fatima on May 13, 1931. So, in October 1940, Lucia was ordered to write directly to the Pope. She wrote this letter on October 24, 1940, corrected in style and form by the Bishop of Leiria, and it was sent to the Pope Pius XII on December 2, 1940, right at the beginning of the Second World War. The letter says, "In various intimate communications, Our Lady, our Lord, has not ceased to insist on this request, promising most recently, if your Holiness deign to consecrate the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, with special mention of Russia, and to order that in union with your Holiness, and at the same time all the bishops of the world do the same. He will shorten the days of tribulation with which he has determined to punish the nations for their crimes, to war, famine, and various persecutions of the Holy Church and your Holiness." So, in 1942, the 25th anniversary of the apparitions was celebrated, as well as the 25th anniversary of the episcopal ordination of Eugenio Pacelli on the same day. In a long radio message in Portuguese to the church gathered in the Jerónimos Monastery in Lisbon to celebrate the end of the Jubilee year on October 31st, the Pope consecrated the world and Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. He said, "To you, to your Immaculate Heart, in this tragic hour of humanity, we entrust, we consecrate not only the Holy Church, the mystical body of your Jesus, which suffers and bleeds in so many places and in so many troubles, but also the world, to the people separated by error or discord, and especially to those who profess a singular devotion to you, and among whom there was no house where your venerable icon was not held in honor, today perhaps hidden and stored away for better days. Give peace and lead them back to the one fold of Christ." So the Pope did not say the word Russia, but said, those who where your venerable icon was held in honor, today perhaps hidden and stored away for better days, because the communist regime prohibiting the faith of Catholic, the Christian Russians were forced to hidden their sacred images. They are forced to hidden their Mother of God image that we have, this icon. So with this expression, the Pope asked for the consecration of Russia. In subsequent consecrations, one aspect was always missing, like the first consecration. This is how Pope John Paul II wrote to the bishops of the world in December 8, 1993, inviting them to renew with him, wherever they were and in whatever way they found most appropriate, the consecration of the world to the Immaculate Heart on the following solemnity of the Annunciation of the Lord. What was missing in the previous consecrations was that the consecration is made in communion with all the bishops of the world. So Pope Pius XII, he just made the consecration by himself as a pope. So John Paul II decided to write to all the bishops of the world, saying them, I want you to be united with me. Well, we cannot tell if one bishop did not make the consecration. But the Pope made the consecration in unity, in communion with all the bishops of the world. And so, on March 25, 1984, in front of the statue of the Apparitions Chapel in St. Peter's Square, the consecration was made as the Virgin Mary as requested. And as there were doubts, despite Sister Lucia having immediately said that heaven has accepted this consecration, she wrote to the Pope, John Paul II, on November 8, 1989, that assuring the Pope that the consecration was done as Our Lady has demanded. And I say this because, if you remember, on the next day, November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. So imagine, and for everybody at the time, the fall of the Berlin Wall was a surprise. So imagine when Sister Lucia wrote to the Pope November 8th saying the consecration was done, in the next day, the communist regime fell away. Finally, Sister Lucia also wrote the book Calls from the Message of Fatima. I gave the name before. Sister Lucia, since the beginning, was prevented from publishing any writings about Fatima without the express permission from the Holy See. She received countless letters with questions that she could not longer be answered personally. So, she then organized the questions by topics and wrote an explanatory text about each one of these topics. After a visit from Cardinal Bertoni, at the time Secretary for the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, Lucia received permission for the book to be published, divided into 4 parts. The first, answering questions that she had been asked about the family and the guardian angel of Portugal. The second, about the various appeals contained in the message of Fatima. The third, on how to live each of the 10 commandments. And the fourth part, on how to pray the rosary and meditate on the 15th mysteries. In the presentation of this book, in the year 2000, the Bishop of the Diocese of Leiria Fatima, Dom Serafim, wrote, "It is necessary always to distinguish so as not to suffer disappointments between Sister Lucia the seer, instrument of God, and Sister Lucia the interpreter, with her intelligence or with her heart, certainly noble and generous." The author appears in this book as a confidant, not only because of the attention, dedication, and personal connection reserved for those who sought her out, but above all, because she offers her own experience of growth and understanding of the dimensions of the message of Fatima. And the last one. After Pope John Paul II's pilgrimage in 1982, Sister Lucia met with the provincial priest of the Carmelites, Friar Jeremias Carlos Vecchia, who asked her, "Have you written anything, everything, all the details concerning the message from its beginning?" Sister Lucia replied that she did not, because when I wrote the memoirs, I did it so in a hurry without time to go in detail. And so the provincial responded her, "Well, it is necessary to do it now as I can to complete the history of the message and to offer to God this further sacrifice made for His love and for Our Lady, which they so deserve." And so, again, for the last time, in obedience to the Church, in the person of her superiors, she wrote his last memoirs, "As I see the message through the times and events." This last manuscript is a true spiritual testament, born not only from her memoir of the events, but also from the long years she spent with the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a refuge and path to God. In her free time, and while her health allowed her, she was able to write some pages full of spiritual depth and affection for humanity, for the poor sinners, as the little shepherd said at the time of the apparitions. The 60-page manuscript ends with the memory of the August apparition and was published posthumously in 2007. Lucia died in her cell at the convent of Carmel of St. Therese in Coimbra on February 13th, 2005, at the age of 97 years old, holding in her hands the blessing sent that morning by the Holy Father John Paul II, who in turn will die on April 2 of that same year. I finish by quoting a paragraph from the decree of the heroic virtues of Sister Lucia, given in Rome on June 22, 2023. From the silence of the cloister, she became a universal figure, keeping in her heart the dramas of the world through prayer and sacrifice, harmoniously uniting the mystical and prophetic dimensions. The latter also developed through immense epistolary and literary activity. May the example of Sister Lucia help us to draw closer to God and to His will. Thank you for your attention. And now, if you like, I can answer some questions that you can have about the message of Fatima and Sister Lucia. Yes. No, the Lucia apparitions that she had finished in 1929, and with the apparition of the Most Holy Trinity and Our Lady, and the request for consecration of Lucia. She wrote about all these apparitions, and they are public knowledge, and she never had any more apparitions of Our Lady. So the end was in 1929, the end of the revelations of Fatima. Yes.
With the conflict right now with Russia and Ukraine, with the conflict with Russia and Ukraine,
I will answer. About the present war between Russia and Ukraine. We know that the consecration is a personal consecration for the people at the time, at each time. So we must renew the consecration because we must continue to grow in holiness, and new generations are surging, are appearing, are born, new necessities are appearing. So it's not a magical that resolves all the problems at once, because like Christ died in the cross, and we still are in a path of conversion. The kingdom of the plenitude of the salvation still has not happened in plenitude because we are not converted. So the consecration was, as Our Lady asked, was done in union with all the bishops of the world. But we, in special times, must have conscience that we need to continue to work for the conversion of sinners. And so renewing the consecration, we must assure ourselves, must take notion ourselves that we must continue to work. We must continue to be more faithful to the faith, to Jesus Christ. So I remember we had in Fatima, when the pandemic started, we consecrated Spain and Portugal because we remember this flu. We renewed the consecration right after the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Pope consecrated. He sent Cardinal Krasevsky to Fatima to, in communion, at the same time we can consecrate the world. We know that now we are many wars, many wars. We forgot the war in Myanmar. We forgot the war in Sudan. We forgot the war in so many places in the Holy Land. So we still have the need to pray, to offer sacrifices for the conversion of the world. And knowing that each generation must renew their commitment for peace. Each generation must commit to build the kingdom of God, to be holier, to convert themselves. We cannot wait for the others to change if we are not, if I may say, if we are not willing to change ourselves first. And so seeing the difficulties, and remember, Pope consecrated to the world, to the Immaculate Heart of, in 84, the Berlin Wall, the regime communist of Russia fell in 89. It took 5 years of transformation. We saw the workers' union in Poland, solidarity. We see Gorbachev with this politic of glasnost, perestroika. We see the falling of communist regimes. Now we have other regimes, other ideologies who destroy humanity. Maybe not the communism in Russia, maybe not the communism in China, maybe the wild capitalism, seeing a person just another consumer, seeing each person as an object to win money, seeing each person as a number in the spreadsheet. I'm being clear. So this way to see the world, to see persons as discarded, so many discarded, like Pope Francis told us about, those who are in the periphery of the society, the discarded ones, those who do not count because they are not powerful, because they are not famous, because they are not influencers. So these ideologies of social media that force young girls and boys to try to achieve an image that is impossible to achieve. Perfection. Skin, perfect body, perfect image. And we see young girls and boys destroying themselves because they cannot be what they see in the social media, because they cannot be what they see in Instagram, because it seems that it's easy to be beautiful, it's easy to be famous, it's easy to be influencer. That's this destruction of humanity that we must fight. And I think that we, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, yes, we fought communism, because communism was destroying lives of uncountable people. But today, what is destroying life of persons? Abortion, euthanasia, the devaluation of human life. So we must try to build connections and be able to tell each person that we meet, you are also loved by God. You are also cared by God. And so when I consecrate me, my family, my parish, my community to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, because I know that Mary is the mother of all of us. And she wants all of them, like the chicken gathers together their chicks under their wings. That's how what Our Lady does with us. And so in that's what we experience in Fatima, when everybody can go and sit near the chapel to talk to Our Lady. And here we have the statue of Our Lady here in so other places around the world. We have the Blessed Mother going as a pilgrim, Our Lady of Fatima going as a pilgrim to reach all the corners of the world, bringing this message of love, of faith, mercy. And so we must constantly, we can constantly renew our consecration, consecrate our communities, consecrate the world, consecrate the places where our problems, because we know that the change of the world is not only with big movements, with big summits, with big accordance, but is also and especially made with small efforts, the small parts of the world, the small people who nobody noticed, but change the world in our parishes, in our communities. Change happens in a small scale. I remember that in the Portuguese Scouts, we have a say that is, think globally, act locally. And I think that in the church, we also must have this say in our hearts. Think globally, but act locally. What can you do to bring Jesus to your neighbors? Okay. I hope that I will. I hope that I can be understood like this. We can change the world. Um, and I remember a book that I read about World War II and the Normandy D-Day and what happened afterwards. And the title of the book was Citizen Soldiers, because the people who reached Normandy and restored democracy in Europe and um, won under to the Nazis was made not by professional soldiers, but by normal people who wanted to give their life for the liberation of others. And that's what important. And that's what holiness is. And that's what the children did. Jacinta, Francisco gave their lives for the conversion of sinners. Okay? Thank you.
Father.
I'm suspicious, but I also think so. Yes. Yes. You cannot know because she kept, and yes, she kept all the rest for herself. And as she said in the last operation, she said in the song Holy Trinity, she said, I receive lights about the mystery of faith that I cannot reveal.
We are going to play.
Yes. You're welcome. And for me, it's an honor to be here and can talk about Fatima and people to grow in faith.
That's not what I said.
And so it's been really open to that.
Good. Good.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Today,
No problem.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Don't worry about it. Oh, God.